Welcome to the Pastured Pig Podcast, where we share the successes and challenges of raising pigs on pasture. We talk to producers all over the country, from small homesteads to large commercial pasture operations. Whether you're new to pastured pigs or have been raising hogs for decades, we hope you hear new ideas and new perspectives on pasturing hogs. Here's your host, Troy McClung.
Well, good day, everyone. It is Pastured Pig Podcast time again. Excited to have another episode out. Kind of getting in a groove here. I like this. So today we're going to talk with a fellow West Virginian, and it's nice to be able to talk to somebody local and get into that type of stuff. But our guest today, Brian, he and his wife are really new. They're actually just kind of celebrating their 1-year anniversary of having pigs on farm and getting into the whole farming thing. So this is going to be an episode where we talk about the challenges and some of the obstacles that they've had to overcome and some things they're still trying to work out. So I'm going to let Brian obviously give you those details, and then we'll catch you guys on the back end of the interview. Today, we are just going up I-79 a bit, and excited to talk with a fellow West Virginian in Bruceton Mills, a little further north. Northern West Virginians, they're a little different than us Southern West Virginians. But anyway, I'm anxious to talk with Brian MacFarland of Five Forks Farm. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, Troy, how's it going?
Going well, man. How are things up in the northern section of the state?
Well, right now as we speak, a little wet.
Ah.
Today started off actually quite beautiful there after a short rain shower, but it has turned on to quite the shower here this afternoon.
Yeah, it's been a little wet in West Virginia this spring, hasn't it?
It has.
Yeah. Like I say, we dodged the rain tonight. In fact, that's why I was a little bit late for this interview. I was out running the bush hog on the tractor, and I thought the time that I had to put it up and get in here and get set up was enough, and clearly it wasn't. I was a couple minutes late there, and of course then we had technical issues. So that's how it goes.
Yeah. That is.
Okay.
It tends to you tend to run long on just about every chore. At least that's how it seems for me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's been it's the humidity, believe it or not, the humidity is really low down here, and nice cool breeze, and it's about 68 degrees outside. So it was just, I'm like, man, I'm going to mow my brains out. So we'll see how it goes. All right, so let's dive into Five Forks Farm. So Bruceton Mills, love that area. It's for those of you that don't know anything about West Virginia, it is just a little bit east of Morgantown, where the great Mountaineers, home of the Mountaineers, that's about the only thing we're known for when it comes to sports is WVU football and basketball. So you're just a cat's whisker east of Morgantown. So tell me about Five Forks Farm. Give me that overview of your setup there.
Well, so we're located about 45 minutes outside of Morgantown, and our property our front property line is the Pennsylvania state line.
Oh, wow.
So I am as far north in Preston County as one can go. We are located about a mile from a 5-lane intersection, locally known as the Five Forks. And that's hence the name, Five Forks Farm. I also enjoyed the alliteration, which is why we landed on that. So we are 10 acres of mostly wooded, and it's a mix of both pines and very mature hardwoods. We have a small, maybe 2 acre pasture down the center of our property, and I should give a little color on the layout. We are essentially the shape of a football field, little more narrow than we are long. There's a creek running through the front quarter, and the remnants of I would say probably, I don't know, 3/4, maybe a half acre pond that used to be at one point in time. And we have the great fortune, which is part of the reason why my wife and I fell in love with the property, of finding one of the flattest pieces of property in all of Preston County,
Yeah.
West Virginia as a whole, rather.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like it because that area is not known to be very flat. So you're up on the plateau, right? Still that far north in Preston County, still on the plateau.
Yes.
Yeah. So do you know your elevation by chance?
It's funny. We just talked about this at work not that long ago, and off the top of my head, I cannot remember. I would not do it justice to say it out loud.
Yeah, but you guys are at least 2,000, I think.
That's yeah. If I had to take a stab at it, 21 or 2,200
Yeah,
feet.
yeah, cool. That's awesome. And so, and I have to. This is where I nerd out a little bit. So your property line touches the Pennsylvania border. So you have a property boundary that's actually part of the Mason-Dixon line.
I do. Yep. And our driveway to get onto our property actually comes through Pennsylvania.
No kidding.
So every day I drive through Pennsylvania for approximately a mile and a quarter.
Wow.
No matter what.
Yeah, man, I love that. I nerd out about that type of stuff, especially with land and the boundaries and to have a piece of land that is struck from the Mason-Dixon line. That's really cool. That is really cool.
Yeah.
So how did you come across this 10 acres?
So my wife and I, we owned a trailer in Morgantown. We were located, if you've ever been to the stadium there in Morgantown, as you walk out of Ruby Memorial Hospital, looking at the football stadium. If you turn to your left, there was a hill, Valley View Avenue. We owned a single wide on that hill, so we could see almost down in on the football field. And
Yeah.
we had been we'd been playing around with the idea of buying, trying to find and buy a piece of property to call our own outside of Morgantown. And after I'm going to say a couple of years of looking and a lot of disappointment, most of the property that we had seen leading up to this one was either too expensive, way too far outside of town, the house was too far disrepaired, those sorts of things that everybody runs into. But then we came upon this one, and our original feeling was actually no, because of the drive. I work in Morgantown, and my wife at the time worked in Morgantown as well. So we were both a little apprehensive about the commute. But after you make it a couple times and we talked it over, and we really fell in love with it. It's very secluded, the property. So from the main road, actually the Five Fork Road, we are a half mile back, and the property in front of us is I want to say about 60 acres that's vacant. And then our neighbor owns all 250 acres, or probably more than that now, all the way around us in a horseshoe shape up to that Pennsylvania line. So we are really secluded back here, just us, our neighbors, who are fantastic to have as neighbors, because outside of them, I think our next closest neighbors are about a mile down the road.
Yeah.
And so we went from in the heart of Morgantown, Saturdays during football season, was packed, people walking up and down our street, to now there's when you get home, you're not seeing another car.
Yeah, that's nice. Very nice.
So we bought the house and property in 2019. We closed on it, I want to say, in either late October, maybe it was in early November. And our after we moved in, which wasn't until maybe January or February of that following year, which was going into March of 2020, when the pandemic took place and began. We really, other than the idea of just a couple of chickens, we really had no intention or idea of any sort of serious farming of any sort. We just fell in love with the property, and I like the idea of being able to hunt outside, right outside the house, and the seclusion, the quiet, all those things. And so but then I want to say maybe mid 2021, there seems to have been a quite a large boom stemming from the pandemic, I'm sure, of homesteading and farming, small scale farmsteads, and how to be more self-reliant, how to be more self-dependent, raising your own food. And so we kind of started down this YouTube journey of what would that look like. And we have 10 acres. We're really not doing anything on it. I have no idea what I'm doing. Let's continue to watch YouTube videos on it. And our journey kind of started with about 30 chickens that I purchased after seeing a friend at work. They had purchased some, and I got a hankering, and I said, you know what, let's just do it. Let's just get started. And after all 30 of those chickens died to raccoons, I realized that this was not going to be nearly as easy as I thought it would be. And so after battling raccoons and trying to really figure out how many shortcuts can you really take and fail at before you just listen to the Joel Saladins and the people that you've been watching and telling you do it this way. And so finally we bought some electric fence and and started moving forward with following and practicing rotational grazing, even with just 30. I think after that first batch of chickens all died to raccoons, we got a hold of I want to say 40 more from various people, and started selling eggs just to friends and family. And that following May, April really, we really got the idea. Let's start a farm. Let's really start doing this. We're selling eggs. I think we can raise pigs. And so we found, what better way to raise pigs than to that you've never been around than to just buy a breeding pair and try to farrow pigs with zero experience.
That's right. Head first, and dive into it.
That's right. So we hopped on Craigslist and Facebook, and we bought a stock trailer. I want to say, I can't remember the town in Virginia, but getting rather close to DC. Actually, we took quite the hike to save money on buying this stock trailer. And my dad did us a huge favor. He has a 3/4 ton truck, and he lives. I grew up just north of DC in Howard County, Maryland, and he came down and met us and was going to give us a hand, driving it back so I could pull the trailer back to the property. And it wasn't. It was, that trailer was really rough. We still have it. It is really rough. But the 4 tires that were on there looked, halfway decent. The 2 spares were complete trash. But the guy had just replaced one, and he said he had pulled it a couple hours down the road, just like a week or two before. And it wasn't maybe 45 minutes into the drive on a Sunday when one of the tires came off while I was going down the road talking to my mom, letting her know that we had purchased the trailer and how happy we were to be getting into this adventure. And it came off, actually on the interstate. Very fortunately, it didn't hit anybody. It didn't cause any accidents. I watched the tire pass me, and as I was talking to my mom, I literally said, oh man, a tire just came off the trailer, and there it goes, and
gracious.
So it was at the time it was very scary. Now looking back, it's something that we still laugh at.
Yeah. So was it a tire failure, or was it a hub? So it was a tire and a wheel that came off, or just the rubber came off the rim?
No. So I'm assuming that the fellow that we bought it off of, when he changed the tire, because it was a brand new tire, did not torque those lug nuts down all the way.
Yeah.
And it went from pulling just fine to rattle, and
it's gone.
the tire and rim, tire and rim popped off and was taking a trip down the interstate. So we ended up spending a very long time trying to, obviously then with two spares that were completely shot, and it getting later on a Sunday afternoon, tire shops were not open. And we ended up buying a undersized spare from Walmart, getting it on. It didn't even touch the ground. But it was there in case something else happened,
Yep.
And we made it the rest of the way home. And I think we rolled in. We had left that morning just after church. It was maybe 10:30 or 11. And I don't think we got home until probably that time or later that night. But anyway, we then I think two weekends later we took a trip to Gettysburg to buy our first pair of pigs.
Right.
They were after listening to and watching a number of YouTube videos and listening to a number of podcasts, I really fell in love with Berkshire. And so that's where our search started, was just Berkshire into Craigslist, and we landed on a Berkshire Duroc pair from a fella in Gettysburg. And from going from owning no pigs, really having never ever been around any pigs, but maybe during an elementary school field trip, to having a 750-pound boar and a 350 or 450-pound sow in the back of a trailer that just lost a tire, a few weeks before. It was a reality check for sure. They were very intimidating, animals. When you think of a pig, you just I don't know. That's not what I had in mind, and pictures don't really do them justice. But we were in, so we got them home, got them behind some pig panels that I had set up there in the yard, and I wanted to train them to electric fence, trying to do everything right. And man, after they got out of the trailer and the reality set in that we owned pigs, man, my wife and I were just ecstatic and really fell in love with the idea of having pigs at the house, and what that's going to look like. Obviously farrowing and then, finishing those hogs. So that following week, we took a trip, to a different part of Virginia and bought our first 4 feeder pigs. So they were Berkshire Old Spot crosses. We bought 4, 2 males, 2 males, 2 females, sorry, and brought them home. And so we had 4 feeder piglets that had, were maybe 30 or 40 pounds apiece, and these 2 breeding pairs.
Yeah.
And that was May of 2023. That's was really when we got started with our pigs here at the farm.
Okay, so you're coming right up on the 1-year anniversary of having pigs on the farm there.
Yeah, and that's kind of where the idea came from. Man, it would be really cool to kind of document this and talk to somebody and get interviewed and try to share something with others that may be thinking about starting, and who were in my place, because it's easy to listen or watch, people who are successful, who are established, and want to get there, and it's also very intimidating to see those same things and think, how am I going to get there?
Yeah.
And by no stretch of the imagination are we there yet. But we're definitely on the way, I think.
Yeah. So let's back up a little. So your Berkshire Duroc mix, your breeding pair, you said it was a sow and a boar. So the sow, I guess, had been proven. Was she bred when you got her, or did she cycle soon and you got to see some breeding and get some farrowing out of them yet? Have you had any litters out of that pair?
So she had just had a litter 8 or 9 weeks prior to us getting her, and yes, she was proven. Um, and she had that was her third litter, and they were all very successful, according to the guy we bought them from. And so we felt really confident, that she was a good mom, that he was a proven boar as well, because he was quite large, and it is quite large and is expensive to feed, but we wanted to jump in with both feet, so that's what we did. And after they got here, it was within a month that they bred, and then obviously a few weeks, or maybe a month and a half later, she started showing, and it was late September when she actually had the litter, and she delivered on that first farrowing. She delivered 11 total, and one was stillborn, and so we were down to 10. And that first day, that first night, she had them in the evening. That first night we came out to 4 dead piglets she had presumably rolled on them.
Yeah, yeah.
So we were down to 6, and the following day, throughout the day while we were at work, she rolled on a couple more, and then that following night she had rolled on a couple more, and so we went from 10 piglets on, I'm going to call it Monday, to 3 on Wednesday. And it was really, really, heartbreaking. We a lot of time and money and everything invested in them, and to have so many of them, get rolled on and die within the first 72 hours was just, it was really crushing. It was really hard to have that happen. Just, I felt so confident that I, as the farmer, didn't do what I probably should have, or should have done. I did not set her up for success. I don't believe. I had seen where people had, well, pigs are, if you have a good sow, pigs are natural mothers, and they'll give birth, and you just have to give them some hay. They'll make a nest, and they'll be able to take care of themselves and everything. And I was really adamant that was going to work for us. And so I'd given them a tarp, and given her a tarp. I'd removed the boar, and some hay, and she laid down and had them right underneath that tarp in the woods, just the way God intended. And subsequently we lost the vast majority, just 70% of that first litter.
Okay.
And like I said, having never done it before, and really just basing it 100% off of a couple people's opinions on YouTube and podcasts, I felt really confident, and really had we had a really hard time with that. That was a real big failure for us.
Yeah, that's definitely soul crushing, especially the first go round. You think you've got something that's going to work there, and then you have that type of experience. Did she build a good nest? Did she have too high walls? The temperature late September in that neck of the woods shouldn't have been bad.
No, the nights were cool. And what I believe is that I gave her too much hay.
Yeah.
And they, as the piglets moved, throughout that first night, and they got stuck in the hay, and couldn't get out of the way, even if they wanted to.
Right.
That, and on top of that, I had listened to a podcast where a guy was talking about how you can obviously you can overfeed a sow, and so, but in his experience, his sow, I mean, I believe was 6 or even 800 pounds, and ours measured to be much, less than that. But I just think that I had overfed her for, the 4 months, thinking she's, creating life. We needed to keep her, her nutrition high, and I think that she was slightly overweight mixed with too much hay in the field. And I'm not sure what kind of farrowing setup the guy that we bought them from had. Uh, if I had to guess, I would say he was probably having them in a barn covered, and potentially even with a heat lamp of sorts. But yeah, so that first so out of that first litter, we got three, and those three are actually still here on the farm. They're getting ready to go to the butcher here in the next probably in the next few weeks.
So that's right at so that's roughly 8 months old.
Yep. Yep.
So what do you think they're going to weigh out as that mix? They should be pretty good size with the Berkshire Duroc mix there.
Yeah, so our first batch of feeder pigs that we bought, which were Berkshire Old Spot, they finished at 200 pounds hanging, and we got them, somewheres in the 6 to 8 week range, like I said, about 30 or 40 pounds, and we had them for 6 months, give or take a week or two, and they finished at 200 pounds hanging weight. So based off of that, I am hoping to be in that same ballpark. I'm still very green, judging a pig's weight. I actually, when we took that first batch of pigs to the butcher, I actually called customers, when we were talking about, and everybody asked, how much do you think they're going to weigh?
Right.
And I was just very, as honest as I could be, and say I honestly don't know. It's a live animal, and I can't tell you what they're going to finish out at, and I don't know what they're going to be. If I had to guess, I would say in the 125 to 150 pound, hanging weight. So when they came back at 200, I was very surprised, very happy that that they had finished out as well as they did.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great place to be there. Again, as long as your customers are acceptable and willing to pay that extra amount. But yeah, that's good. That's a good finish there in that time period. So those were the four that you finished. So they're obviously a little bit older. So you got the three remaining. So you're going to process those soon. So have your breeding pair? Have they had because they probably had an opportunity there? Have they had another farrowing since then?
Yes. So 8 weeks ago, and our sow, we call her Mama, so that's how I'm going to refer to her. Mama had her second litter here on the farm. And this go around, I had my dates wrong, and I thought I had a little bit more time. Turns out I did not. We did not see them breed this go around, so I was just kind of basing on her size and the timeline of well, it's been 10 or 12 weeks since it's been 10 or 12 weeks since the first set of piglets, that first litter had gotten to the 8 week mark, which is about when they bred the last time. I never saw her go into heat or anything. So, but obviously she started getting quite large, and the milk began to drop and everything. So we actually came home on Easter Sunday from church. Very unfortunately, to a pair of our neighbor's dogs had, not our next door neighbors, just a guy from across the way, had gotten into our yard and killed some of our chickens, and had actually jumped into the pig pen with our breeding pair, who had just delivered, their our litter. Very, very fortunately, I don't believe that those dogs killed any of the piglets. One of them was dead when we got home from church, and but it didn't look like they had attacked it. But anyway, we had gotten on this litter, other than the one stillborn, was 11 again. So we had 10 alive, and so I kind of sprung into action as quick as I could to try to get the boar out of the paddocks that the sow was in, and which was actually rather unsuccessful at first. I had to coax him with a ton of feed, and change up the layout of our pig netting, which I was not prepared for. It was really it was really a surprise for us.
Yeah.
Like I said, I thought I had a little bit more time, but I obviously I was wrong. So I got her hay as quick as I could, and within that time period, she had rolled on a few piglets that were just a few hours old. And so I actually got on the phone and called a neighbor, a guy that we know, from our church, who has talked about, and I've shared these stories with him, and he's, he has been around hogs all his life and has had a lot of experience farrowing. And he said, can you get him in a barn, and can you set up a heat lamp, and kind of explained the way that they used to do it. And so I kind of had the idea, and I took that stock trailer that we had. It had a center post in the middle, and I hung a sheet of 3/4 plywood across that post, and there were doors in the front, and I, through the front window, hung a heat lamp, and then coaxed Mama into the stock trailer, and took the piglets away from her and put them underneath the heat lamp, as quick as I could. And we had 6 that were still in good shape, and I'm sorry, we had 5 that were in good shape, and one that was that had definitely been stepped on or rolled on as well. And we did our absolute best to try to bottle feed her back to life, but I the injuries were just too much. So we were down to 5, which again was a massive failure, but we were still feeling pretty good, and our setup was a lot better. Now we had them up off the ground, so they wouldn't get too cold from the rain, or drown, for that matter. We had just a light amount of hay, and, like I said, plenty of cover from that stock trailer. So if I've learned anything from all of this, it's that, while I'd like to be as hands off during this process as I possibly can, I also can't expect 100% success, if I'm going to choose to do that. And so we've decided, we're gonna give it one more shot here, with farrowing, and really do everything in our power to set Mama up for success, because I know that I can do this. I've really enjoy the idea and farrowing here on farm. I really enjoy that, and being able to sell that to customers, farrow to finish. And one of the things, as we've kind of looked at, scaling and growing our farm, the reality sets in that, we have 10 acres minus, obviously where the home is, and where that pond and our road goes through and everything. So, you know, when you really look at how much room we have, and what's a really functioning, sustainable farm model, with finishing hogs, and while also, practicing rotational grazing, giving your ground plenty of time to rest, and not trying to moonscape the entire thing. We think that one of our better options would be piglets, which are from what, at least from the research we have done, which is why we ended up driving to Virginia for our first batch, are in somewhat short supply locally. They are far and few between people having litters, selling feeder piglets, and there are plenty of people finishing hogs in and around the area, but not very many people producing the piglets themselves. So I really think that's going to be a really good niche to try to get into, but we have to be successful at it, and we really have to set ourselves as well as, our sow up for success before taking that leap into, what does it look like having 2, 3, 4 sows, to really be able to sustain having, a boar on farm, year round.
Yeah. Yeah. So she finished her second litter. She ended up finishing with 5 viable. So those 5 did make it. And you're probably getting close to weaning if you haven't weaned already.
So we finished with 5 viable, and 1 during a rainstorm got out from underneath the heat lamp and decided to go for a walk in the mud, and unfortunately, died.
Yeah.
So we've got 4 piglets from this second farrowing, which is, 1 piglet better than the first go around, and we are they are now ready to be weaned here. Any time. I really just have to find the time to get them into their training paddocks.
Yeah. 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 I would definitely want to, I definitely want to explore more with that sow. And if you're in contact with the farmer you bought it off of, be curious to understand what her previous litters, how well she did in the farrowing setup, because they do kind of get into a rut there, or they go with what they're used to, and definitely worth exploring that and finding more information out about how successful he was with her first 2 litters, and just what his farrowing setup was. So you had a kind of a warm weather farrowing, and then you had Easter was in late April this time, or early April. When was Easter? No, it was late March, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah, last week of March, I believe. Goodness, my months are all running together. So yeah, so anyway, experiencing a cold weather farrowing, not dead of winter, but you had both opportunities there to kind of explore the different options and see how she works under those conditions. So it would be interesting. I mean, I'm in agreement to maybe give her one more chance, but I would think she'd have to perform stellar. Yeah, Easter Sunday was the 31st of March. I think she'd have to perform really, really well to stick around. Because like you say, it's if something where you want to produce better litters and have options for resale and those type of things, and yeah, you definitely got to get those numbers up to make it worth your while.
For sure. And that's, the idea is to both, be able to sell, half or even more of a litter. We were hoping and expecting, somewheres in the 10 area, and we really, and I mean, both litters that we had, were 11, with just one stillborn apiece, I believe. Mm-hmm. And, so the numbers are there, and everything. It's just, like I said, I think it's on me as the farmer, not setting up, an actual farrowing crate or farrowing hut, if you will, for her, which is what I would assume. She had some sort of setup like that, whether it was just inside, on a hard dirt floor or concrete floor, or and whether or not the piglets had a heat lamp to escape to.
Yeah.
I'm unsure, but
yeah, there's a lot of debate and a lot of opinions on heat lamps, whether you should have them or whether not, and then even the times of year that you target for farrowing, because the heat of West Virginia summer, that heat lamp's not really going to be that attractive to the piglets, because it's not going to draw them away. And of course, like you say, you get into these situations where a farrowing hut that has bumper rails on it and less hay, all those type of things, just things you explore and see what that looks like, and maybe that's even, as you move forward, maybe that's adding an additional, bringing a gilt in or another proven sow. I like the idea of the next one being a gilt. Bring her in and let the boar breed her and see how she does, while you give this sow one more chance, and that way you've got potential numbers there to move on to.
Yeah, that's those are, that next step is what we're really balancing and weighing all of our options, because like I said, I really enjoy the idea of farrowing here on farm. I really think that it could be a successful business model, and I mean, it's, other than the fact that we've been wildly unsuccessful thus far, it really is enjoyable, especially now, like the 8 piglets that are ready to wean, seeing them grow, seeing them interact and with each other, and as you drive, as I drive down the road, they chase my truck, because they know I'm home, and they know that a feed bucket's coming soon. And it's just, those things are really what I'd like to see be successful.
Yeah. No, that's great. So as I love how this discussion's unfolding, because this is really a good, realistic opportunity or realistic representation of the challenges starting out, and challenges can range all over the place. It can be just keeping your pigs in the paddock you want them to, and I interview people where that's an issue. Hey, the pigs get out, all these type of things, or it's figuring out feed and not enough feed or too much feed and all that. So there's all these little different areas of things learning. So you guys obviously have had some really good life lessons in farrowing and those type of things. But what other, Brian, have you run into other things this year that you and Courtney would say, hey, we weren't expecting that, or we were expecting that, we learned this, we learned that, and maybe some major adjustments that you guys had to make in the last 12 months that maybe it'd help some of our listeners that are thinking about getting started?
Yeah, I have a laundry list that I don't think we have enough time to go over everything, but
okay.
the couple big ones are fencing. Early on, trying not to break the bank, and and invest too much into this thing that we had really no experience with at all. We didn't want to go out and shell out a couple $1,000 for permanent fencing around the entire property. We didn't want to shell out $1,000 or more for the pig quick fence. So we, very early on, we just started with just a few sections of the Premier One pig quick fence, and that has worked extremely well. So long as I don't have any so long as I do what I'm supposed to do, walk the fence every day, and check for down limbs or check for any mud that's been flipped up on it or anything. That quick fence, I mean, really works well, and has worked well for us. We I was very apprehensive to put the boar, especially the boar, but just because he is so large, behind a single strand. And so we had our first batch of feeders behind just one section of pig quick fence, and I was moving them just about weekly. And very quickly I learned that we need more. Trying to move 4 piglets, or four weaner pigs from with only having one piece of fencing is just a recipe for disaster. And same with the breeding pair. We had 2 sections of fencing for them, and trying to figure out, okay, if we don't feed them, the evening feed, and on Friday or Saturday, and then wait and feed them at midday on Saturday or Sunday. If I put a big enough pile of feed, they'll be feeding it, and I'll pull all the fence, and I'll run around and put all the fence up, and I mean, that was just a disaster,
Like
every single time.
Yeah, for sure.
And I had I had gotten the idea, as any good YouTube researcher does, from a channel that's you only need one section of fence for your animals, this and that, and I will say it works for them, and I'm good on them. It does not work for us.
Right.
So we very quickly after a few moves of that, we started buying more fence. So now our the pigs that we're finishing, we have behind 4 sections at a time, which I think comes to about a quarter acre, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they're 100 meters. Do those come in 100-meter sections?
100 foot, I believe.
100 foot. Okay.
Yeah, so it's I can't remember. I think it's either an eighth or a quarter acre at a time, but okay. For 4 pieces of fence. But we and that having more fence for the pigs, and honestly for all of our livestock. We have laying hens as well, that I've built an egg mobile on a hay wagon, and early on trying to do the same thing of only having one fence, and I was there too. You don't want to spend, you're staring at that $100 $150 bill from Premier One, and thinking well, if I just put more work, just more effort into it, I can get by. But man, it's the sense of security of not having never having a pig not behind a fence is just it's worth every penny. After having some scary moments, very, very fortunately, none of the pigs that have gotten out from behind fences have gone very far. And I bucket feed all of our pigs.
Yeah, good.
Every day. They're seeing me. I'm walking in the paddocks with them. I'm filling their bowls. I'm touching them. I'm around them. So I want them to be absolutely as comfortable with me as possible. And so that the simple things of getting them back behind their fence, getting them loaded onto a trailer, getting them off of the trailer, and really just being comfortable around them, because early on, when we first got our breeding pair, we really, I was very nervous, being around. You hear horror stories everybody talks about. My dad even told a story about, I can't remember if it was his a friend or cousin, got bit by a sow. There's a farmer down the road from us, who actually I really think would be a great interview for you. Who was talked about when he was younger, a sow picked him up when he was pulling piglets, and and shook him around. He was a linebacker in high school, pretty stout kid, and just got shook around like a rag doll.
Yeah. Wow.
And so you hear all those things, and then you have a big boar that could very easily moves you around when you have a bucket of feed and he's hungry. I mean, it's intimidating for sure. But we decided. I'm sorry. So I needed to be comfortable around them at all times, and I needed, if I didn't feel comfortable around them, we weren't going to continue, to do this. And very quickly, it becomes evident I mean, they are, and all the ones we have had so far, very docile, very friendly, very easygoing, and haven't shown any signs of worry. So, doing those things like just buying the extra fence. I know it's expensive, but buying enough fence that you can comfortably move animals, and then on top of that, the 2 is 1 and 1 is none redundancy,
right, yeah,
of knowing that eventually that fence is going to break. It's something is going to happen, with that fence, and it's easily repairable, but at the same time, it's just so much smarter to have extras of things on hand, at all times, and just, instead of trying to do things the cheap way or the fast way, or think that, well, this is probably a better idea than, what Joel Salatin said, or what you've shown on your channels,
mm-hmm.
or talked about, just say like, oh, I could do this better. I could figure this out. And, I mean, the truth is, all of those things that, the successful guys do, including yourself, are learned from making the same mistakes that I've chosen to
yeah
chosen to make.
I've got 10 years of screw ups under my belt. You've just got one, so yeah. So.
But yeah, the fences and buying a quality energizer, buying quality batteries.
Yeah.
I mean, those types of things that you think you can get by, and then when it's cold out, when it's December, January, it's been, just flirting with or below freezing for days, and you go out there and well, that's a brand new, I just took that battery off charge and put it on. It's already blinking red, and I mean, obviously some of that has to do with the cold, but it's those types of things, those types of decisions, especially early on when money is so tight, and saying, I'm going, make the investments. And the thing is, what's crazy is everybody says that. And yet, myself and others, I'm sure, included, have said, no, we'll buy the cheap stuff,
right.
Or, we won't buy enough, or, I'll try to get by, and try to bullhead this thing. And it just, if it works for you, like I said, good on you. But it has not worked for me. At least not very successfully. So, and the other thing, that we learned is that, a single strand, fence will work, and we have trained our piglets, from this last farrowing that our sow just had, that are, getting ready to get pulled from for the paddocks with mama, here hopefully this weekend, that they, with mama being in the paddocks, if we ran 2 strands, one, maybe 6 or 8 inches off the ground, and then another one at maybe 2 feet, 30 inches or so, and they, since we have done that second strand, they all have stayed in. I think it definitely helps having that sow in there, them learning it, that electric fence, that psychological barrier, with their mom in there as well, to be able to, kind of show them the way, that if, just stay inside the fence. It has been, the single strand is also very scary, but it works. I had, but along the same lines, I had watched um, uh, Sheridan Park Farms,
Mm-hmm.
and you just had him on, and his name is fleeting me right now. I'm sorry.
Chuck. Yeah, Chuck.
And he did a uh, he did a YouTube video on what does it cost to raise pastured pigs? What do you need? All the equipment. And he ran through everything, and so I essentially did exactly that. Purchased almost everything exactly what he had purchased, except for the reel. I think he had used an extension cord reel, and I bought an actual electric fence reel as our first one. And man, the investment into a geared reel, with all the bells and whistles of um, a guide for the poly wire to spool onto the reel a lot better, and a good stop on it. That again is a wonderful investment to make. And while you can absolutely get by with a cheapo reel, I have one, it works. Those types of things are a lot of times really worth the money.
Yeah, yeah, and it's interesting when you look at that. And like I said, there's unique setups. I think every single farm is unique. And you look at what Chuck does, you look at what I do, you look at what Jordan does, all these different setups, and you got to find what fits. And sometimes that is, okay, if this is something I'm going to try, and it may be something that needs to be discarded or sold again, you just get rid of it. Then that initial investment, do I go buy the Cadillac or do I buy the cheap model first and see if it's going to work, and then just see how that how all that shakes out. But it's one of those things where it's rare where you say, I invested in the best of this, and I really feel like I wasted my money. Unless you go a totally different direction, it's like you get what you pay for in a lot of the circumstances. And if it's just not something that's function at all for you, you're going a totally different direction. Then usually those things even have have resale value, so you can just put it on Craigslist and try to get some of your money back from it. But the thing I always run into, and when people ask about fencing, is I get by with single strand. I've never used any poly wire. I've never used any netting for pigs. But I always say, how important is it for you to maintain what's on the other side of that fence from your pigs? So in my situation, I'm 100 acres and I'm surrounded by nothing. So when a pig gets out, my worst situation is he's standing on the front porch looking at me. It's not like he's going over and wrecking the neighbor's place or tearing up, rose garden or just, hitting the hills or going out in the highway and causing issues. So looking at those type of things and say, the single strand can keep them in, a good hot single strand, but if they get out, what's the ramifications? What's the potential for ramification there? So that's where it may be worth investing in better infrastructure and more coverage of those perimeter fences.
No, I couldn't agree more. That's fencing is like you said. I mean, it's a big debate on what works best. We use both. A single strand, and that pig netting, and well, I've been happy with both. Both have their upsides, both have their downsides. There's a quote. There are no solutions. Oh man, that quote just slipped my mind. There are no solutions. There's only trade-offs. There we go.
Yeah.
So it's those are the things that they really they're easy once you go through it and you look back and you say, man, buying an extra charger and just having an extra charger here, or buying that extra piece of fence or buying that extra reel. I mean, man, that stuff really really makes sense. But in the moment when you're standing in the feed store, or you're online, and your pocket starts to hurt because you're buying this stuff, it feels like you don't need it, but most of the time you do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it's just some of those things you gotta learn as you go along because you're not necessarily flush with cash when you're first starting, and it's like, well, I'm going to buy the bare minimum, and just kind of face the consequences and the challenges that go along with that, or leave out a key step. I think water is always a huge issue for people, and it's like, well, I'm going to bucket water. Okay, yeah, that works. That is a very viable option to bucket water, but as you bucket water in the dead of winter, as you bucket water in the scorching heat of summer, and you're bucketing water every day, it's like, okay, now I need to look at maybe doing some sort of tank and nipple waterers, or plumbing the pasture with some pipe, all those type of things, and that's where you decide, I'm going to invest in more infrastructure in these areas, because that's the most important thing right now when you look at your time and your energy, and of course expense when you're doing something. If there's a smarter, quicker, faster way, and maybe less expensive in the long run, then you explore those things.
No, that's the truth.
Well, Brian, we've hit the 1 hour mark, and I feel like there's still plenty I'd like to talk to you about on that, but we probably should be sensitive to our listeners. They sometimes give me some pushback when we get a little long on this, but I really appreciate it. I love the fact that you came on, you're willing to share the challenges and you use the word utter failures in some places, but I would say those are just setbacks. But this is something you're putting in your mental diary, you're writing down, you're documenting, you're doing these type of things, so you're going to be able to learn and to grow from this as you move forward, and just keep testing. And I love the attitude of these two Farrowings were a drag, and it was really really disappointing at times, but we're going to press on. We're going to learn from those mistakes and just keep growing from that. And I like the idea of you're exploring a niche, looking at something that's needed in your area. And I think that's a good idea to explore that and try to fill that niche with something that helps you generate revenue to keep the farm going and growing.
Yes, for sure.
Well, all right. Well, let me do this. I do want to ask you, I always like to end with this question. What is your favorite part about raising pigs on pasture? What do you like the most?
Well, I listened to the show, so I knew this question was coming, and I've thought about it a lot, and I uh, my favorite part of raising pigs on pasture is also my least favorite part, and that is the chores. Part of our journey, with starting this farm is we've started a family. I have a 2-year-old daughter, and a baby on the way, due in October, and we are. I since moving to West Virginia, I have experienced what it's like to be around people who have grown up on farms, and you can tell very quickly that person grew up on a farm, and then later you figure it out, and it's like, man, it just shows. I did not grow up on a farm. My wife did not grow up on a farm, but I would like my kids to grow up on a farm and learn you know learn those things of discipline, and hard work, and all the things that come with growing up on a farm, that 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 will pay dividends through their lives.
Yeah.
It's that in and of itself is really one of the why I love raising pastured pigs.
Awesome. Good deal. Good deal. Good answer. Yeah, I think generationally I'm the same way. I didn't grow up on a farm. I grew up rural and was always around farming, but my parents didn't farm. We always had big gardens, and of course it was always very rural. But there's just something different, and my boys have gotten to experience it. I don't know that they'll ever want to be on a farm now that they're adults, but
Right.
but at least they have that experience, and I think there's a lot of growth potential that comes from that. I think there's a unique perspective and understanding that just a lot of people in today's culture just don't get, and maybe even more of appreciation for what they eat and how they spend their spare time, and then how they even look down on or not look down on some of these manual labor jobs, because they have a great appreciation for it and realize that the hard work done by the guy that's hands are dirty all the time actually has more value than a lot of the desk jobs and the paper pushing type situations. So I like that perspective, and it'd be great if everybody had that perspective.
No, I very well said.
Alrighty, so let's do this. If people want to find out more about you, do you have any online presence that they could check out?
We have a Facebook page, Five Forks Farm on Facebook, and Bruceton Mills. No website at this time.
Yep, cool. Well, all right. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing these challenges, and we got to get you back on, sometime further down the road, and just see. I love doing these follow-ups with farmers that are just getting started, and then maybe coming back around a year and see how things have changed. So we'll have to put a star by your name there and follow back up with you maybe this time next year and see how things have gone.
Very, very much looking forward to that.
Cool. All right. Well, Brian, I appreciate you being on the podcast, and I pray you have a great week, man.
You do the same. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate Brian coming on the podcast and taking the time to get real, some of the challenges he's facing. I definitely remember those days of not fully understanding what was going on, or not being ready, or being surprised by something and having poor farrowings. It's, unfortunately, that's not something you necessarily escape either once you get more experience. But, man, I really appreciate him sharing that, and pray that he and his wife Courtney can just build that farm more and more. It'd be nice to have a Berkshire source close, within a couple hours drive from here. Always nice to have that fallback if need be. Well, I want to thank everyone for reaching out and being a part of the podcast and doing all that. I kind of feel like I've gotten a second wind. I know the beginning of the year of 2024, things got a little bumpy and had some big gaps there, and of course dealing with a little bit of illness and some other issues. But I like to think we're in a groove here, and I think this new format is working well, where I'm recording these bumpers. So you're hearing this, if my scheduling goes well, you're hearing this near the end of June, but I'm actually recording this bumper the night of the recording, which was the end of May. So as far as updates go, if I do a bunch of updates of what's going on here, then that doesn't have a very good shelf life. It's a little stale. But if there's anything pertinent going on, I will discuss that. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tease this because I'm still fleshing this out in my mind. But if you watch our YouTube channel, you probably haven't seen a lot of pig videos because we just haven't done them. In fact, we're kind of scaling down right now. I'm in the process of looking at cycling out my entire breed stock and starting from scratch, and really deciding whether I want to come back at a production level or at a homesteading level, because I really want to explore some alternative things. If I've learned anything post-pandemic and some of the other things we've seen economic-wise, and just the state of the situation in the world, I find myself being led to be more sustainable when it comes to farming. And so to do that right now, scale is my biggest enemy. So when I look at raising food for my family, there's obviously challenges there, but those challenges have a smaller obstacle to overcome when it comes to volume. When I look at doing those same things and scaling it up and providing food for a lot of people in our community, then that makes those challenges extremely daunting. And right now I rely on a lot of off-farm inputs to be able to do what I do at the scale that I do. But we'll get into that more. I may just do some standalone podcasts where it's just me discussing what we've run into, 10 years of experience of doing this at a commercial level, and learned and issues we've run into, and some of those challenges, and then maybe some of the impetus as to why I'm thinking of going this direction. Like I said, I just feel like I need to be a little bit more closed loop when it comes to providing food for my family. I'm not a doomsday guy. I'm not saying the world's going to end tomorrow, but I'm just really feeling led that way to explore more of those options. And I think it'll be a fun challenge. What can we do to produce food on farm that eats food from on farm versus massive amounts of inputs off farm. But now I'm starting to ramble. I also want to thank the Patreon supporters. Man, I really appreciate you guys sticking in there. Those monthly gifts, those monthly donations, really what keeps the fire going for this, because there's times where the challenges on the farm, the things going on, got a lot of stuff going on. As you get older, I don't bounce back. I think I mentioned, I can't remember if I mentioned it on the podcast or not, falling off a ladder 2 weeks ago, a 6-foot ladder. When I was 25, you got up and shook it off. Now that I'm 51, it's like that's still sticking with me. I think I've got a rib that feels like it's sticking out one side, and I can't cough without hurting. I can't sneeze without hurting, and that's been 2 weeks. So those type of things, kind of take the wind out of your sails sometimes. But to see you guys still part with your hard-earned money to support the podcast, it just shows me that, hey, there's people out here that still find value in this, and this is worth doing. So I thank you so much for that. If I don't say thank you enough, I apologize, but I really, really appreciate it. And it's just really good to know that people out there find value in it to the point that they'll part with hard-earned dollars. And that's not lost on me, because every dollar these days is very important. In fact, the cheaper the dollar gets, the more important it becomes. All right. Well, again, continuing to ramble. If you want to be on the podcast, if you know somebody that should be on the podcast, or if there's a specific topic we should address on the podcast, reach out to me, Troy@redtoolhouse.com, or you can use the pre-screening information at the pasturedpig.com website. So just check that out. Well, I really appreciate you guys listening. I pray you all have a great week. Take care.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast. To learn more about our podcast, or to submit topics or recommend guests for future episodes, visit redtoolhouse.com.